Hello, 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 everyone. Hi. So today, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya was at the NIH or is at the Senate for a confirmation hearing. And I was curious. I actually had this thought like back in December, like, what if this whole new administration comes about and then a bunch of changes happen in the nutrition sphere? So I had some fun in AI and I just threw my ideas at it and it made these bills basically that would create new laws that might be fun to kind of open up the nutrition discussion. So I wanted to make a quick stream, maybe an hour or so, where I react quickly to Dr. J's nomination hearing. Essentially, he said he's very open to new thinking in a flexible ideas. He wants to think about new ways to test chronic diseases, not necessarily something that has a patentable drug that some pharma company can make a ton of money on, but basically just diet changes or like cheap drugs that everyone could access. uh, Now I don't know much about that, but to me, what I'm thinking is like, wow, we could actually like try out extreme nutrition like concepts that haven't really been tested before at a federal level. We had the huge nutrition trials back in like the 60s and 70s that tested the lipid heart hypothesis, the diet heart hypothesis, etc., the Ansel Keys era, and we haven't really tried to like replicate that science or test for new versions of it. So I created this document in AI. Let me actually make sure I'm streaming and everything and check YouTube. So I've got my chat here, and hold on. So I'm also thinking about buying a new computer. Help me deal with requirements of streaming. Okay, so here's my account. View your channel. And yep, I am live. All right, and audio sounds good. Great. I'm going to try and speak really directly into my microphone here. Let me get this directly in front. All right, so make this a little bigger so I can see. All right, so a Nutrition Policy Modernization Act of 2025, an act to amend the National Nutrition Monitoring and Related Research Act of 1990 to restructure the process for developing the dietary guidelines for Americans, to incorporate specific evidence-based dietary patterns, to update daily values and acceptable macronutrient distribution ranges, to establish a national data collection system for nutritional information, to create an AI science hub adopting open science principles, to adjust privacy laws to facilitate voluntary public sharing of health data, and for other purposes. So to me, a lot of things bother me in the nutrition space as kind of like a carnivore supporter, someone who thinks, we don't really need to eat carbs, we don't need to eat plants, we don't need to eat fiber. So to me, the dietary guidelines like don't make any sense. So I want to basically say like rip out all the like you have to be within these guidelines and say like you can actually be all over the place and we don't really know what is best. And if we open up the sharing of data and collection and then we use AI to process and understand it or like similar kind of um, science that already exists today, epidemiology, and all the programs they have and statistics. We can probably find trends where we can identify them and use diets and other drugs to help fix them. So um, I I love AI because when I have these ideas, I can just throw them at it, and it can kind of upgrade them and upcycle them into like a real idea. So oh wow, stop eating seed oils just hit 45,000 members. Yay. All right, so that kind of brings me perfectly into this whole discussion here. So I wanted to say basically the dietary guidelines for Americans were initiated in 1980. Uh, and that was from Senator George McGovern's 1977 meeting where they convened and they were basically saying, look, heart disease is killing our Americans. Like, what's going on? We need to do something. And even though the scientists can't agree, it's better to do something than nothing. And essentially, that launched an experiment on the population where everyone cut their saturated fat and animal fat intake and increase their vegetable oil intake and maybe their carbohydrate intake. And then kind of ate more processed foods and less fresh meat. And that has basically led to the chronic disease epidemic. And whether or not that's true, the question is how can we find out? How can we verify it? Um, Nina Teicholz has done a lot of the research on this. I have her book here. And then also Dark Calories is the new book from Dr. Kate Shannon. Pointing the finger at how vegetable oils. I know this is backwards, I think, on the video. You guys have it backwards, but it says how vegetable oils destroy our health and how we can get it back. And basically, we just want to basically say like the dietary guidelines seem to be very heavy in support of vegetable oil, and we should basically have more flexibility on questioning that. Um, all right, so the impact of dietary guidelines on public health. Since the adoption of the guidelines, there has been a significant increase in the consumption of processed foods high in added sugars and refined carbs. The prevalence of obesity among adults has increased from 15% in 1970s to over 42%. It's probably even like 50%. And then there's also like that's obesity, but there's overweight, there's like over fat, which is like a little bit more stringent than like the 30 BMI. So then almost everyone is like over fat, like 90%. So that's what we're interested in. Like, why is that happening? And is it from our diet? And is it from our dietary guidelines? Uh, and the heart disease remains leading cause of death. So, why haven't we changed that? Or is it really, have we really gotten better at like preventing it? I would argue that kind of the decrease in smoking led to most of the reduction in heart disease deaths, but the statin initiatives haven't really helped. And the focus on LDL cholesterol. I would say like we should focus on limiting seed oils instead. Um, so let's see. We would establish a new consensus on human nutrition and dietary flexibility. So human beings are physiologically adaptable and can thrive on a variety of dietary patterns, ranging from all meat carnivorous diets to predominantly plant-based diets with appropriate supplementation. I mean, I'm fine with saying this, all meat to almost all plants. Maybe there's some additional supplementation like vitamin B12 or iron or heme iron or something that like a real vegan diet would need. But I think we could kind of say that this is possible, that you can survive on all these diets. Whether or not you can thrive is kind of the question. Maybe I should change that to survive instead of thrive. Um, let's see. I uploaded the PDF into this, so boom, I can just switch pages directly. So carbohydrates. Let's see, that's hidden a little bit. Yeah, so like the body can produce glucose through gluconeogenesis. So essentially, we're saying carbohydrates are not an essential macronutrient. You don't need to eat any. So the essential dietary carbohydrate requirement is effectively zero. If you read the dietary guidelines today, they cite the IOM, which is like the Institute of Something Management. They basically did like a study on carbohydrate intake, and they said like, yeah, it's zero because like the Inuits existed, and we don't know how to explain it really, but we still recommend you eat a lot of carbs. Um, so we've got these essential fatty acids, also omega 3 and omega 6. They're required in small amounts, approximately 1 to 3% of total energy intake. Um, but this is kind of like a misnomer. And if you think about the actual individual fatty acids, like the longer chain 20 carbon ones, EPA, DHA, and ARA or arachidonic acid, are really the only truly required fatty acids. And again, actually, the research on this is bad and could use like an NIH update. Like we don't really have great human studies in this. It's a lot of animal studies and mouse and rat stuff that's interpolated. But their fatty acid metabolism is different. They have different genes and editing, so it's we need to really do it ourselves. But essentially, the current dietary guidelines recommend a LA and ALA recommendations of an adequate intake of 17 grams of LA or 5 to 10% of total energy as LA. And then there's a 1.6 gram adequate intake of ALA, which is the alpha linolenic omega 3. But these are the 18 chain polyunsaturated fatty acids. And they're predominant in plants, but they're like less prevalent in ruminant meats and fish. Well, LA is less less yeah, less in fish and meat, but there and then the ALA is like a little higher, but really like the EPA and the DHA is what you want to get from those foods. Um so let's see. So the guidelines are basically saying like we don't really care about the essential amount because it's way over the essential amount. They're saying like you should eat like 10 times the essential amount. And I'm saying that's probably an industry like push to say like you need to eat our like soybean oil instead of really saying like it's required. And they make an argument that it's better for heart health, so you could kind of follow that argument to its conclusion, but it's really just like lowering LDL cholesterol is linked to reducing heart disease, therefore seed oils. Um, And then, like, there is, like, some meta-analysis data, but I think we can downplay that, or question it, or just redo it. And, like, the dietary guidelines recommend a 5.6 to 1 omega-6 to omega-3 ratio or an omega balance of, like, 9. So these are really out of line with the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of 4 to 1 to 1 to 1 that like the NIH used to promote. So something's going on there. Like, why did it used to say like evolution said we should be in the super low range, and now it like doesn't seem to matter. So and they did like tons of research back. Like I've looked at the NIH like documents and videos and stuff, and they have like all these amazing lectures from like 2008 where they debated omega 3 fatty acids in the warfighter and stuff, and then it like went nowhere. And so it'd be nice to bring some of those initiatives back. So let's keep going here. This document I think hits on the fatty acids a few times, so we'll hit them again. But the daily values and these adequate intakes, like for the optimal like high carb plant based American diet, they're grain based. We don't really know like what a carnivore diet has as like the essential minerals and vitamins. And it could be that humans are actually best adapted to a carnivore diet that has that unique set of vitamins and minerals comparatively. Like you need to eat more on a plant-based diet because biological availability is much lower. You have more fiber, you have more phytates, you have basically more things that steal away the nutrition. So you need to basically tell people to eat more in like the whole foods and the processed foods overall. So it's interesting there. So we need like a need for personalized nutrition. We basically need to say like it's possible to live on zero carbs, right? And like different levels of fatty acids and proteins and whatnot. And that there's genetic, metabolic, and lifestyle differences among individuals that necessitate more personalized approach to nutrition, and that one size fits all dietary guidelines may not effectively address the diverse health needs of the population. And that's one thing that dietary guidelines also say. They say these are made for healthy people, not unhealthy people. Okay, well, if 9 out of 10 of Americans are unhealthy, what are they supposed to follow? There's like no guidelines for them. So maybe like one of these extreme nutrition plans that, carnivore influencers like me are talking about is worth a shot. And, I'm willing to give the vegans a shot too and allow people to kind of self-select these diets outside of these strict guidelines and then say like, this is how I did on these. I did it for 3 months. Here's my honest opinion on it. And, it was great in these aspects and terrible in these others. And here's this data you can now crunch. And oh, by the way, I'm going to keep doing the diet because I love it so much. And then you're like, wow, okay, that's a great data point. And now we can use that and we build up on that data. Um, and that's a lot of what these ideas are about, like advancements in technology, data analysis, AI. Uh, I've been making a lot of data recently, a lot of like Excel spreadsheets and stuff. And now I'm like, man, like, how do we get all this data from all these places, sources, all these individual apps now, all these keto diet, chronometer apps? Why isn't the NIH like the leader in all that? I mean, it seems like way behind. These food frequency questionnaires seem way insufficient compared to like a AI app that takes pictures of all the food you eat and then calculates the macros and the calories. Like that's the stuff we can like start at, like eventually you just have a camera in the kitchen and it would log everything you eat or something like that. Uh, all right. So purpose of this app is to restructure the development of dietary guidelines, abolish the existing advisory committee, and establish a new transparent and evidence-based process. We can incorporate diverse and evidence-based dietary patterns. Like just be honest, like, okay, like we don't have long-term data for these diets, but this set of doctors think it's great for these reasons. These other set of doctors think these diets are better for these reasons. This is why they disagree. It might be an LDL cholesterol reason is, typically what it is, but there might be other things. There might be environmental reasons at the heart of it. Like don't eat animals because it's you think it's bad for the environment. That's really the primary reason. Whatever. Um, Update nutritional standards. So yeah, revise these daily values and acceptable macronutrient ranges and enhance data collection. Sometimes with AI, it kind of repeats like ideas a lot. Um, so let's see the restructuring. So yeah, there's this 1990 act that I guess originally made the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee, which was to like run every 5 years and update the guidelines. But we could basically just abolish that. I mean, maybe with Trump and like a full GOP Congress, they could do this. Now, me, I'm not really a Republican, so this is all kind of like, wow, is this really happening? And it's interesting that yeah, we weren't able to focus on this before, and we'll figure out if it even becomes a focus. I'm making this video just kind of as like a pipe dream, as like Dr. J could somehow understand some of these fun ideas and be like, yeah, well, let's try these out. So yeah, the systematic reviews of the highest quality scientific evidence for these new dietary guidelines. I mean, like Nina Teicholz has some great articles on using GRADE, to make the new science guidelines, have no biases or have them very like open, say like, oh, we're actually going to put 10 vegans on a panel and they're going to make their vegan recommendations. And then like we're going to have everyone else say like why they disagree with those recommendations and then just put all that data out in front of people and then they can decide for themselves. Like share all that info and people can make up their own decision and then like update the info as the science changes. Like let's say, well, we're going to do good science on all these diets. So that's the other thing: incorporation of specific diets, inclusion of specific evidence-based dietary patterns. Down in this section 4, so Mediterranean diet, DASH diet, vegetarian and vegan diets. And we have low carb diets, ketogenic diets, traditional cultural diets. I added these last 3: carnivore diets, essentially plant free, low omega-6 linoleic acid diets. Now I'm kind of opening my mind up to thinking like, all right, you might not need to like cut out all the carbs if it's really like the linoleic acid, the seed oils that are driving your like obesity or chronic diseases. And you might not even need to eat like an all meat diet either. So well, let's test that. Let's get that in. Yo, what's up, Kevin? Nice. Thank you for joining me. You're my number one. Let's see, show. Boom. Kevin, nice cat. That's a great one. Hey, I'm in the same boat politically that is seeing the Republicans be anti-corporate junk food. Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like we could have a whole stream on this. Like, how do we wrap our minds around it? Because, like, corporate junk food and seed oils and like big agricultural subsidies, like, this seems to be like Republican bread and butter. And now Trump comes in and says, like, I'm going to be Maha. And actually, Maha came from Nina Teicholz, and then she got it into like the RFK camp, and then RFK sided with Trump because he actually wanted to talk to him about it and could use the votes essentially. So now it's just like whether or not the GOP really cares about it, I don't know. But I am hopeful seeing like Dr. J's like testimony and RFK's testimony being grilled about all these issues. And now I'm seeing like, oh, maybe I could like open my mind up on some of these vaccine issues. Or realize like, yeah, it's just kind of like very political attacks that, like don't actually reflect like what he's trying to do. Like if he's trying to end chronic disease, but they're talking about vaccines 100% of the time, then it's like, well, yeah, like let's move on though. He said he's not going to change much. So, Kevin, nice to see you here. Hope to see more comments from you. So yeah, I was down here on my diets. So I think a low LA diet should be tested. And we can do more high LA diets, what consensus thinks. That's essentially what like the DASH diet is, or actually this My Plate USDA Eat Right diet. So boom, there's like the 17 grams of LA a day, 10%, 20% seed oils. Like let's see what that diet does. Does it really perform better than a carnivore diet? Guidance on implementation, some practical advice. Like you can go in and pick one of 20 diets. Like, why not? Yeah, so we update these daily values because now all these diets mean different changes, right? So like you can't tell people they need to eat fiber if they're also doing a carnivore diet. So here I outlined all the specific ranges. Yeah, hey, Kevin. Yeah, that's a kind of I don't know, a secret. I don't think anyone knows that. But you know what? I'm gonna give her the credit. Oh, you are? Oh, Kevin says he's on our scientific nutrition frequently. Ooh. Yeah, I basically consider that subreddit vegan nutrition or like vegan nutrition light or something. Um, they take a pretty consensus view in a lot of things, and I know Reddit like the back of my hand. Okay, so um, we got our nutrition, and then we have all the subreddits I've created and everything in between. But good to have you here. Yeah. I get some haters in our nutrition. Hopefully, I can tell them I'm kind of reasonable about a lot of these things. So establishment of updated AMDRs. These accepted macronutrient distribution ranges, right? So like the dietary guidelines say you like have to be in these things, and then they like won't even look at science that goes outside of them. They won't like tell kids or military that they could go outside of these, and they just aren't scientific. They're not based on like anything that's real, like essential nutrient or something. It's just a what like had worked up to that point, basically back in like the 1960s, 70s, or 80s when they like started designing these. So let's go through these specific ranges. So carbohydrates, I want to drop it down to 0%. Why not? And it's acceptable to eat 0% carbohydrates. I don't think that should be crazy. And I think it's kind of like racist to say it's not, like, oh, well, like people up north who eat only seals all winter long didn't exist, they didn't exist for 2,000 years. Yeah, our nutrition is insanity. Our scientific nutrition at least had good mods. Bad science gets pointed out. Yeah, I agree. Our nutrition, I think it's also run by some dietitians, and they don't have time, I guess, to consider anything outside of consensus because they're just trying to get consensus across. But you can't talk about any like diets or evangelism in our nutrition. You get banned pretty much within a day. It's kind of fun. Go test how fast can you get banned from there by just like saying some reasonable arguments on nutrition, like what I'm saying here. So carbohydrate 0 to 65. The high end for the carbohydrate current AMDR is 45 to 65%. We've got like a member now at our Stop Eating Seed Oils, and they are basically like really gung ho about this high carb diet that's like low on seed oils and most fat. So it's like 10% fat. And I'm kind of coming around to just being like open to their point of view at least. So, I mean, they're not saying like, oh, we have to be vegans or whatever. They eat some meat, but they're also saying like, look, this seems to work really well for me. And it like metabolically, like that seems to make sense. So, you know what? I could maybe even go up to 80% of for carbs, like 80, 10, 10. Like that crazy diet. But, like, well, again, it's kind of like just open up the possibilities for people. We're not telling everyone to eat 80% carbs and 35% protein and 80% fat at the same time. It's all a balance. So again, fiber, it could be 0 grams a day. Currently 20 to 45 grams, based on size and gender and stuff. Fiber increases the weight of your stool and like by 3 times, and it means you absorb less of the food you eat. So if the food you eat is unhealthy and you absorb less of it, then fiber makes you healthier. But if you're eating healthy food like meat, ruminant meat, and you're not eating fiber and you're absorbing all of it, then wow, you just have less waste and you produce less fermentation, less gas. So we should say that there's no requirement to eat flat plant foods, that eating fiber for the sake of fiber is kind of like pointless. Some people feel better on more fiber, and that's why like just the total amount can be advertised. But like we shouldn't really say there's a fiber requirement. Um, and the guidelines basically make it seem like it's more essential than it is. So I just think we should be more clear. It's not actually essential. You don't have to eat like 10 grams of sawdust every day to be healthy. And that's the other thing. Like by saying fiber is good and healthy, these processed food companies can add sawdust to their foods and say like we added cellulose, and that helps their bottom line because they're putting in less like actual calories, but more weight, and then they can displace that area, um, that mass, I guess, with in undigestible things. So maybe that's good. Eat less crap, but it's also like you're gonna take more craps. So added sugar, it's currently 10%, but it should have a goal of 0%. Why not? Um, like we shouldn't say like, oh, you need 10%. It should really be like, I don't know. It's like I just don't like the phrasing that they have. And also, I don't really feel like the distinction of added sugar versus natural sugar is required. Like the liver just doesn't sense the difference. Maybe we could break it up into fructose and glucose and try and estimate like how good each one of those is. Maybe fructose is worse because it like is in the polyol pathway and it creates like more insulin resistance. Probably worse with more LA, reasons like that. But um, maybe a change there. And then so the elimination of the 130-gram low requirement. So like they kind of say like 130 grams is required because like the brain is required to run off that much a day. But if you're in ketosis, like you're creating your own endogenous glucose supply with gluconeogenesis. So you don't need to eat any carbs. And but basically that myth is like a thing that like a dietitian might say, or kind of like an old housewives tale, but it's not really accurate. And we should just make sure that, like say like it's a myth basically. So proteins 10 to 35% of total daily calories. I know we have some papers, especially from Mickey Bendor, saying 35% is like the upper limit of total daily calories. So I'm fine with that. I would probably say 20 to 15% is good. Most people are probably under eating protein, and also animal proteins are more bioavailable than plant proteins, and they provide more essential amino acids. Now, I know you can like mix your beans and your rice and change around your levels of the various amino acids, but they still are less good essentially. So let's see. Then we've got fats. So there's like, I think a fat guide in the current ones of like 25 to 35%, might be even 45% high. And it seems like people get really sick in like this 45% carbs, like 35 or 40% fat range. So basically I want to allow ketosis to enter the diet. So we can have like up to 80% of total daily calories, and and then you could do an 80% fat diet and a 20% protein diet and have zero carbs. But, obviously I'm not saying all these things can be true at the same time, because, it equals way over 100 or way less than 100. But, together they could equal 100. You can figure out like the right ratio. So elimination of 17 grams LA, replaced with 1 gram or 1% for LA. And that would mean that we could eliminate like all advertising around the essentiality of like eating LA. So because all foods have at least 1%, like beef has 2%, butter has 2%. Like you're not going to get like really anything under like the requirement. So any fat you eat is going to give you like the amount you need. And there are even arguments that you don't need LA, you just need the long form of it, the arachidonic acid. So interesting there. We should eliminate any suggestion that saturated fats are unhealthy. So dietary guidelines, they're all focused around limit saturated fat to less than 10% of your total daily calories. And then if you go on like our cholesterol subreddit, that's like 10 grams a day to prevent heart disease. So really, like people are deathly afraid of cholesterol, or cholesterol and saturated fat. I'm sorry, I combined the next one, but we should basically say saturated fats are a healthy form of stable energy, present in animal and plant fats. That they have different chain lengths, and the individual ones might be unhealthy or healthier in different ratios. But overall, there's no mechanism by which saturated fats can be like cause a disease or increase a risk of something. There's this great Bill Land's quote that I used in my thesis. He said, like, after 50 years of research, we still don't know any mechanism by which saturated fat can be shown to kill people. So, um, at this point, it's just like a marketing line used to scare people away from saturated fat and onto seed oils. And so we eliminate suggestions that cholesterol is unsafe. Maybe we could actually talk about the plant form of cholesterol, oxy, or what is it? Phytosterols, which has been found concerningly in plaques of heart disease patients. We could introduce warnings about oxalams, the lipid oxidation products, of linoleic acid, remove the generally regarded as safe status of seed oils. So basically, anything that was made in the U.S. before 1957 basically got adopted in as like safe for everyone to eat in whatever amount because people had already been eating it for like many years. And like seed oils are like obviously a lot older than 1957, so they were basically like, oh, it's fine. Like we've been eating these for a long time. I have notifications on my little phone here, so sometimes I look down and be like, "Oh, that's interesting." Then I try and remember what I'm talking about. Ooh, see, I just randomly clicked something. Okay, we're back. Let's go to page 5 here. All right. So require. One sec. Oh yeah. So this drives me crazy. The total trans fat percentage is like you can have under point uh 5 grams total per serving. So like a serving of vegetable oil is 14 grams, right? And so if you have like 0.25 grams of trans fats, you can just say that you have zero because it's less than the point 0.5. But that 0.25 out of the 14 grams could be like 5% or 10%. So you would just fix the problem if you just said the actual percent in the oil. So you're like, oh, I didn't have a serving. I had 20 grams of oil, and then I can multiply that by my 5%. And then I'm like, wow, I ate 10 milligrams of trans fats or or grams, whatever, like 1 gram. And, now I had too much trans fats or whatever. And, like we should be as skeptical about trans fats as we are about linoleic acid. And, heating vegetable oils for a long time and all that stuff. So let's go on. I've got lots of more interesting ideas here. Establishment of a national nutrition data collection system. So in my graduate program here, I worked on some clinical trials, and we have this application called REDCap, Research Electronic Data Capture, which I think Vanderbilt University makes or something. But basically, it's like a program that you create like a bunch of forms that your patients can enter data, and then it helps you build a study. So you like add like a repeatable like surveys that they take every 2 weeks or something, and then like maybe they do blood work every 2 months, and there's like scheduling in there, and so it basically builds out your whole study and serves as your framework. So I was like, why don't we just build out like a survey, like a food frequency questionnaire, essentially, but like AI enhanced, app enhanced, better than RedCap, better than anything that exists, and then you just gather self-reported dietary intake, health outcomes, lab results, food logs, biometrics, exercise routines. Now, all this data is being collected by different companies and trying to, be mined. So essentially, like I would say, like what if the NIH could like figure out a way to collect all of that data in like a very standardized way, and then all these other companies could kind of like grab and like use the de-identified parts of it for their own research, and then say like, wow, look at all these people that ate zero carbs and they had no disease and saved this much money on drugs. And like, boom, then you have like a rationale to try that diet. Um, yeah, so this facilitates research on the effectiveness of various dietary patterns. And like, nothing I'm saying is crazy. Like we already have NHANES data. You probably hear about that used in research all the time. but it's like it's old. It's not very like well updated. I want to like refresh, like way more data. Almost anyone should just be able to access this data easily, and it should be all being piped into some AI that like you could ask questions of. And so a big part of this is like we have these HIPAA, like a like Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. I guess like we're trying to protect all this information from being shared. But like, what if people are like proud of their dietary decisions and their health gains, and they want to share that progress in ways that are not just like a YouTube video or before after image on social media, so they could like put their data into this app. They say like, I verify under oath that it's true that I ate these things, that I did these habits, that I adopted these like mindsets, and I got this kind of benefit out of it. Or even, they could say there's, problems with it too. You tried veganism for 6 years and then it failed or whatever. Um, but like, how do we structure all this data, and how do we understand it in like a big AI centric way? And I just don't think like the current systems and laws are like thought about or like reflect like the complexity that AI can give us. There's also this fun new thing called specification curve analysis that lets you try like 1,200 different epidemiology like variables when you're creating the data. So there you could just like go crazy, like reproduce that on all the data, and then understand like, wow, like 80% of the time you get like null values for these epidemiology possibilities. Um, yeah, so access to data, you get like a database, or there's just like a website that you go to, and you would just get like a stream of like this new data constantly. It would be terabytes big or whatever, and then there would be some AI that understands it all. All right, I have 15 minutes before my kid gets home. So let's see. So integration of nutrition uh, and chronic diseases data. So linking nutritional data with chronic disease outcomes. This REDCap survey system, or whatever we would make on top. Collect and integrate the data on nutritional intake with chronic disease diagnoses, treatments, and outcomes. There's also a lot of companies that do this even today. Like they'll just have like a forum that people with chronic disease post to and say what helped them. Um, yeah. Oh, here's specification curve analysis. Okay, good. Like I haven't even read this document in like a few months, like completely. So fun to say like, wow, it knows what I'm talking about. I know what I was talking about. Secretary 7th, adjustments to privacy laws for voluntary public sharing of health data. Yeah, so like maybe you could be like, instead of being an anonymous like ID in some database, you could like say like, oh, I'm really public about it. Like I'm a Paul Saladino of the world, and I went for on carnivore for 2 years, and then I added plants back, and I don't care if whatever people say I did whatever wrong. You could be one of those people, and you just want your body to be used by science while you're still living. Like what's the big problem there? So um, yeah, so public figure social media sharing. I mean, already we do it. AI could probably figure out most of the stuff that we post like non-consensually, and maybe some creepy companies already figuring that out. Uh, All right, so yeah, social media, yeah, like people already share like all these like before after photos, and um, so such individuals can contribute their data to the AI Science Hub and a national data collection system to serve as case studies or science experiments for public benefit. Yeah, you use that shared data by researchers, educators, and policymakers, and the AI Science Hub integrates this data into analyses. Yep. And then platform responsibilities, like all this data and compliance oversight. I can skip all this. Some boilerplate, throw in enhancement of the AI Science Hub for continuous nutritional epidemiology. Um, Continuously receive and integrate data from the National RedCap survey system, including lab results, food logs, biometrics, exercise routines, and more. And then perform this real-time nutritional epidemiology. Like, I mean, you could basically have like selections or ranges, or say like, I want to select like this group of people that do these things, and then see like how healthy are they actually. Um, I mean, it'd be fun too to just have all these controls, like the um people that eat French fries on YouTube all day, and they could be like, "Look how unhealthy I am. Like, here are my biometrics. And this is what happens when I eat 6,000 calories of 30% linoleic acid diets." And like, oh, okay, that's useful. We could use that. What not to do, or how to gain weight, or something like that. Yes, we would use a specification curve analysis I talked about. Could keep reusing it. Analytic flexibility, just kind of keep adding to this database. Yep, improvement over existing surveys and Haynes, bingo. I basically briefly looked up some like feedback, but I'm sure there's a ton. Public and research community access. Yep. Let's see. Let's keep going. There are some also these AI companies like Elicit and Future House that have like these AI science hub goals. So if the government doesn't do it, private business probably will. Um, but then they're gonna paywall it. So how do we kind of get it out there? All right. So here's the establishment of an AI science hub and reform of the scientific process. Yeah. So we can collect, integrate, and analyze all health, medicine, and nutrition information into a single large language model. Uh, Centralized scientific data research, papers, supplements, and databases for comprehensive access. Utilize AI and machine learning. Support policymakers, researchers, etc. So all research funded by federal agencies shall be made freely available to the public upon publication. So basically, like the PDFs, no more like paywalls. The AI Science Hub shall promote the dissemination of scientific knowledge without paywalls or access restrictions. So, like, I'm wondering how long this is going to take in actuality. Like, there's so much science that are locked behind, like, $40 a month paywalls or one-time fees and stuff. So much. And then there's like a century of it that goes back 100 years. And then there's all these medical journals that are open access, but they're like locked in, like poorly formatted, like old broken English and stuff, and they're not like properly, yeah, like understood. My database like tried to use that or find that info and put it into text so that you can search it. My Meatrition all history database, but why isn't all of that in a single like LLM? So I know like some of this stuff is being used by companies to train their LLMs, but like how long until all the science goes into it? Because a lot of times you'll say like, oh, I just found like this number out of the abstract and it can't access the whole paper. So that science is basically sitting there waiting to be like used by humanity, but because AI can't access it, it's going to be forgotten in like a year. And then like all the papers that are full access and AI can access are going to be like, oh wow, like this is like the new standard quo of the science, and then everything's going to like forget the old ones. So maybe that will happen. It still hasn't really happened in the open science world, which sometimes I check into. There's like a Sci-Hub website that like opens your access to science. And as I've been posting science and looking for it to add to my Zotero database and doing my graduate work and stuff, I found every possible way to find science, but it's still bad. It's still like not good. And there needs to be like a way to make money to publish the science, maybe get ad revenue or something. Maybe make money from peer review, uh, helping out, having open peer review so you can see like the revisions in the text of the file. And then you can even have like a living document that has links to all the existing science that it cites, and all that science is available for everyone. And then also there's a way to update it so that people can, well, we found some error, or there's like a retraction. Instead of like a retraction, it's just kind of like a new version upgrade. And then it would like update anything that was based on that original thing and say like, oh, if you weren't aware, like this version 2 changes some of these issues, which just doesn't exist in current science that well. I mean, you get retractions, but they're rare. They kind of like require the publishing company to stoop down and say like, yeah, like you're right, we're wrong, and often isn't done. All right, let's see. On page 10, breaking the monopoly, collaboration and data integration, interagency cooperation, public and private partnerships, promote the integration of privately held data sets. Yeah, I mean, like you could probably start pretty well if you just could collect all the proprietary data sets. Like I know one company has 12,000 patients and like all their health data, and it's like, how do you understand that? They don't know what to do with it. And then, like the Hava data and Verta Health data and other stuff like chronometer and yeah. All right, let's move on. So emphasis on individualized nutrition. Yeah. I mean, yeah, let's skip that. I guess this is to go for every 10 years. I'm not so sure about this. Some of these like parts. Development of advanced food composition database. Oh, this is fun. Yeah. So I've downloaded the USDA database of food. It has like 5,800 like foods, I think, and it has like all the columns of the proteins, carbs, fats, and stuff in it. So I know pretty well what we already have. I think it'd be a lot better. And now we have these like advanced metabolomics analyses of foods, and they have like hundreds of uh, these phytochemicals and all these like extra things that we don't think about. And then like the USDA data like doesn't really like peel apart the fatty acids well enough. So there's like lots of room for improvements. So yeah, expand nutrient profiles here, uh, better macro and micronutrients, amino acids, detailed information. And there's other like databases that do food stuff, and they do factor in a lot of these issues. So it's great, but it's kind of like let's go big and beyond inclusion of cooking methods, food processing variables, fry in specific oils of certain temperatures. Then you'd expect oxalams and advanced glycation end products and stuff. So let's measure them. Let's make sure that they're under the right limits. Um, Oh, okay. So mandatory QR codes. I was like gonna add this in, and I was like, maybe I should read my thing because I'm pretty sure I thought of this before. So, all packaged food products sold in the U.S. shall display a quick response code that links directly to the product's detailed nutritional information in the USDA's new advanced food composition database. It will be prominently displayed. So basically, you just swipe your iPhone, whatever, over this code. It pops up this awesome database. It has way more info. It doesn't just tell you total fat and saturated fat. It tells you the exact amount dihomo gamma linolenic acid, 0.02% of this one little fatty acid. And, it's probably completely pointless, but now you know. And amino acids, percentages, moisture. I mean, a lot of that is already in, but, above and beyond, essentially. The government should be number one. My kind of take on it. And this QR code, I mean, then you don't need like a bunch of like annoying nutrition data that you barely pay attention to. You could actually have everything in there. You could have like science studies on that QR code and that website saying this red 40 dye has been found to cause cancer, etc. And then people say like, "Wow, well, even though this study says this, I'm gonna choose to eat it anyway." Um, so integration with an AI science hub, national nutrition data collection system. Consumers may opt in to share their food consumption data anonymously to contribute to nutritional epidemiology research. Expand and make those really good. Use AI, you take photos. Um, I think a lot of the food frequency questionnaires are kind of bad, or they like limit, like they don't really capture the full complexity of our diets. So how do we, get to like 95% instead of like 60% on their accuracy? Um, Timeline of compliance. So they're pointless stuff here. Let's see. Let's keep going. I have a second act here. Yeah, the regenerative agriculture. Okay. So data integration. So yeah, just kind of build a huge AI data sub of all research and science, and then have data all piping in constantly. And then learn whatever we can learn and be open minded about it. So you can see I wrote this in December 2024. But I should change this to 2025. Here's regenerative agriculture. I just threw this in AI. I kind of forget what I wrote and I didn't read it just now. So let's kind of go in and I'll kind of be surprised about it. It's kind of how using AI is. Like you're just surprised. What could it come up with? So health benefits of ruminant meat. Ruminant animals like cattle, sheep, goats have a unique digestive system that allows them to convert grass and other forage into high quality protein. Yes, accurate. FD. Meat from ruminants have low levels of omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids compared to meat from monogastric animals like pigs and chicken, which can be beneficial for human health. Yes, agreed. That's kind of like my point. I mean, I could say like the consensus disagrees. A balanced ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids is important for reducing inflammation, promoting overall health. Yes, great. Regenerative agricultural practices such as rotational grazing can improve soil health, increase biodiversity, sequester carbon, thereby mitigating climate change. Um, so I was kind of like making fun, like, why do we have like these huge farmlands dedicated to soybean growing when those could be regenerative agriculture and beef and everything? So, um, yeah, we restore that land. And oh yeah. Think about like if we had flying quadcopters that are pushing around your cattle and you don't even need to like go change them out between different fields. It's all automated. And you can basically have artificial robotic predators that push your animals around and eat the right amounts of plant-based forage across your environment. And you even like link it up so that like the your cattle herd can move with like the changing grasses over like the season. Oh, it would be pretty amazing, but beyond complicated and hard to understand at this point. But to me, it's fun to imagine. Let's see. So enhance human nutrition, educate and raise awareness. So here are some like possible ways to promote it. This kind of like Savory Institute, rotational grazing, AMP PG, and getting away from having to depend on like soybeans and corn to feed your cattle. Oh yeah, okay. Advancement of AI automated adaptive multi-paddock grazing. Yeah, these are kind of general ideas, but something there. Section 6, promotion of ruminant meat for human health. Um, yeah. So I mean, basically, a good complete part of a keto or carnivore diet, low in six, generally raised, grass fed. We have better certification programs. We allow like beef to be processed like not on strict USDA like facilities, which kind of like favor factory farmed meat, but have different ways to you could sell it. Um, say like, yeah, I actually butchered this thing in my backyard, and I hope it's good. uh, Health studies, fun research on the health effects of consuming industrial seed oils high in omega-6 PUVAs, such as soybean oil. Yeah, so reducing reliance on industrial seed oils, dissemination of findings, encouraging alternative crops, market development, promote oils with more favorable fatty acid profiles, such as olive oil or avocado oil. I would probably not do that. Those are like pretty expensive and require a lot of um, land and water and sun and stuff. So actually probably do more like 0 acre farms, like cultured oil, which basically taking sugar and turning it into monounsaturated fat. Reforming meat processing infrastructure, decentralization of slaughterhouses. Okay. Yep. I just keep reading the future, what I'm about to say. Yeah, so I took a meat processing course at my grad school, and learned all these things that the USDA has to do. And a lot of it is really important, but there are issues where these small grass-fed farms just don't have like the same ability to use these big USDA facilities. Are only in certain areas. You have to travel far. How do you travel far when you have like 80 cattle? How do you get them there? Why do you have to like drive by like a perfectly good slaughterhouse just because it's like not perfect? But there are good reasons to have that. That regulation keeps us safe and prevents us from like outbreaks and stuff. So um, they're super careful. Like they'll cut off a bit of me if they detect disease, and they send it off for analysis. And so a lot of that is really important. But there's probably ways to make it better. Um, Blockchain technology for supply chain transparency. I mean, yeah, I barely understand this stuff. Sounds like a good idea. AI driven data analysis and integration. Kind of do some of the science I did in my graduate, like soil data, health of the forage versus the corn, health of the meat, like the mineral content, amino acid content, stuff like that. How do you match that all up to the actual like initial designs you had for your farm, your regenerative uh, business, whatever? And then how do you reproduce that and get everyone else on the same healthy cycle? Right, education, workforce, force development. Yeah, just kind of like make people like this stuff again. Skill development, job creation. Have like send out graduated high school seniors participate, in a month or a week on a farm, kind of understand what's going on really. I'm a city kid. I would have probably hated that, but now as an adult, I'm like I appreciate all of that. Um, International collaboration and trade. Yeah, it's just kind of like boilerplate stuff. So definitely all the fun was in my first document there. Um, haven't had any other comments since Kevin about half an hour ago. So I might stick around for a minute or. Ooh. Ooh. Oh yeah. So there's a new article that applies to us. The standardized production of bone tools by our ancestors pushed back 1 million years. I actually shared this on Meatropology this morning, but I didn't get a chance to read it. So 27 standardized bone tools dating back more than 1.5 million years were recently discovered in the Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. The discovery challenges our understanding of early hominid technological evolution, as the oldest known standardized bone tools date back approximately half a million years. So this is an extra million. Okay, they looked at hippopotamus bones shaped on site within the same geo layer. They found elephant bones that have been transported to the site as either tools or raw materials for tool making. Wow. So they're making tools out of hippos and elephants, which means they're hunting hippos and elephants. They're using those tools to maybe hunt more hippos and elephants. And that's 1.5 million years ago. So, like, humans are basically meat processors. It's what we are. Fat hunters, fat eaters. The larger the animal, the more fat it is. It's kind of like the law of the lands of nature. Yeah, so that's what I would I think there's a lot more ideas out there, but when I think about like the dietary guidelines and what like innovative new NIH could do, like why can't we study like all these diets in detail and throw all the biased nutritionists in a room together and say like, okay, everyone, like let's test our diets, let's figure out which one's best. Um, and let's really question like the LDL con basically that America has been stuck under, where no one can question eating more saturated fat, or less seed oils or less carbs. Like, oh, the horror. And like this would be huge because the dietary guidelines like substantial like change just a little bit each year and basically just say the same stuff. The three diets that they have are like basically all 50% plants and high fiber and high LA and like denigrate meat. And so it would be like really fun. Like I'm hopeful for the first time, I guess, that government and science, nutrition and chronic disease might get figured out. It's going to be interesting to see what Dr. J does here, if he even gets confirmed. I mean, it doesn't seem like the GOP are going to do that at this point. Like they just kind of accept anyone that Trump shows. But I think Dr. J has convinced me as a skeptic, as maybe a Democrat, or and I'm excited to see what he has to say in the future. Maybe even work with him or find ways to apply this little library behind me to modern nutrition science and replace nutrition with meatrition, which is meat-based nutrition. So thanks for sticking around. I've been going for an hour and 8 minutes. Please like and subscribe and share. I know my content is very different than everyone else in the carnivore scene. I saw Steak and Butter Gals had a great video on like why we're carnivores, like quick 9 minutes, big flashy bold, the lights in the back and great audio and everything. So I need to get there. Basically, I can just throw together an hour long live stream and get one commenter, and we'll see if I like doing this compared to making like concise content where I say like, maybe we just need to change these few dietary guidelines there. They'd be so much better and just do a 5-minute video. I'll probably get there. But just kind of seeking feedback and critiques and getting my system set up and everything. Getting used to talking to myself for an hour or 3 hours in a row like I did yesterday. Um, and then on top of like everything else I'm trying to do. And yeah, all right. So thanks a lot for being around.